former Council of State Chair and Agbogbo of Asogli State, Togbe Afede XIV, has attributed Ghana's economic crisis to poor management, wastage, dishonesty, insisting it is self-inflicted. The outspoken chief in the latest write-up cited single-sourced procurement and corruption as accounting for the current economic crisis. Former Council of State Chair and Agbogbo of the Asogli State, Togbe Afede XIV, has revealed the rate at which corruption is dissipating the country's scarce resources. The outspoken traditional leader said if the government had dealt properly with issues of corruption, the current economic crisis wouldn't have confronted the country. According to him, the government has not backed expenditure with honesty and prudence. Togbe Afede said that had these two virtues been exhibited, Ghana would not be needing a loan from external sources, insisting the country's budget deficits would have been reduced as well. Ghana Integrity Initiative estimated that Ghana loses close to $3 billion to corruption annually. There is no doubt that our budget deficit would have been narrower, and we probably would not need to borrow from external sources if honesty and prudence had guided our spending, he said. He blamed this on the use of single source in awarding government contracts. This, he explained, that makes way for government the resort to single sourcing or limited tender in the award of contracts, and the false certificates of urgency has been harmful. It has allowed a few to deploy foul means to source contracts for relatives and cronies at inflated prices that hurt everybody. While some exploit urgency, other officials hide under confidentiality, appropriate limited resources into personal wealth, he added. So the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, Professor John Gachi, joins me for a conversation on the back of this. Professor, good evening. Always good to have you on the show. How should government treat Togbe Afede's write-up on the economy?
It's heartwarming that when we are at the crossroads, prominent people will decide to make their contribution by speaking about the ills of the society, the ills of governance and leadership, to awaken them to see if they will tilt towards the right path to rebuild the country. So I think it should be taken seriously, and it's also good for Togbe Afede to speak to national issues.
Right. So what are the key takeaways from that write-up?
Well, there are so many things there. He eulogized the Constitution that laid a foundation for economic development, and the purpose for economic management have been clearly laid out in Article 36(1), as he quoted. But we don't see that happening. We don't see fair distribution. We don't see fair access to opportunities in the country. So that is a very important aspect that he touched on. He touched on vanity projects that are not synced with national development plans. These are issues that he has raised that are very catching, and I believe those in authority will listen. He also talked about how we try to foster nepotism, how we foster tribalism, how we foster winner takes all in the country. It is very interesting because in the past, I believe when NDC was in power, lectures were being held about winner take all, but now we don't hear that again, and that is very disheartening. So I believe we need to reawaken and do what is right.
Right. And do you think there are solutions government can implement from this write-up?
There are. Look at Galamsey.
Okay.
It's very clear. We have not solved our Galamsey problem. We are not able to deal with Galamsey, but we went to Egypt. We were asking for debt swap to manage climate change issues. That is very laughable when we are not able to deal with Galamsey with all the force of the state that we have at hand. So those issues are very important to deal with. He talked about in times like this, there is the need for us to focus on ensuring that we do prioritize projects. So project like National Cathedral is not in the scheme of things the priority of the state, and that we need to disengage for some time. And there are other so-called flagship projects that need to be disengaged to free the state to rethink and move on.
Right. These measures and issues that have been raised by Togbe Afede are obviously not new. So what really does it make? What difference does it make for him to say that?
Well, I think we know the stature of Togbe Afede. We know his pedigree in business and finance. We know his pedigree in his support for all the government. And if he reflects and makes some salient point, I believe it go a long way to affect the way our leaders think and the way we do things in the country. So I believe it's quite important.
Right. Professor John Gachi, thank you very much for your time tonight. He's the Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School.